Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Racist Driving League for Season 21, and welcome to round number 9 of the championship, the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix, being held from, you guessed it, the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. I'm your host, Zach RC, as always, here to bring you through another Monday night of what should be a very enjoyable Grand Prix, but one that could be easily dominated by a number of different drivers. I look to Grumio in particular as an example. Victorious, of course, last week in Monaco after what could have potentially been quite a decent scrap for the win. Grumio ran off in the last few laps and came away with what is now his third victory of the season so far. So 3 wins from 8. Of course, missed 3 of the races himself. So he's sort of yes, means from the 5 races he's done, he's won. Sorry, he's won 4 of them. Apologies. That's 4 wins from his. Yeah, it's been good for Grumio, but of course, those 3 races he missed means that Dan still holds his lead atop the Drivers' Championship. 21 points in the favour of the McLaren driver, with still just the 1 win to his name, but podiums in all but 2 of our Grand Prix this season, coming in Miami with a P6 finish and a P5 finish in Canada just 2 weeks ago. Of course, P2 for him last time out. The hope of the 3-peat was cut short, unfortunately, around the Principality. We'll see if Dan can get himself back to winning ways. Look, it's a tough place to do it. This place has been Grumio's playground the last few years or so. Grumio unbeaten in... Well, I say unbeaten. He's won all but one of his last 5 starts here in Barcelona. So, looking to be a tough customer. And of course, we have got a number of different names in the field who could challenge him, including 2 returning drivers from previous seasons. We welcome back Cott to a full-time seat alongside Imri in the Ferraris. Of course, the 2 drivers who are sort of with the dark horses for race wins back in season 16, joining each other as teammates for the Scuderia after our Pope's departure a few weeks ago. And we also welcome back Obsessed Gamer to the full-time seat over at Cadillac, replacing a quickly departing Shadow Rain. So good to see Obsessed back in the car. Of course, American in an American car. So we look forward to seeing how he can get on that sense. PJ into the first corner, the first flying lap of the evening. Of course, we're driving the Audi, who still sits in 10th place in the Constructors' Championship, tied with Aston Martin. Both teams on 10 points each. Both teams having 1 driver with 7 points, and both teams having 1 driver with 3. So things very much even Steven between the two, those 2 laps in particular. Of course, Ericsson Alvar in the Astons and PJ and Ethan in the Audi. But this has been the first week since Miami that both drivers are in the race. Of course, Ethan missed the race in Canada, and PJ missed out last week in Monaco. So good to see both drivers back behind the wheel, and we'll see how they handle tonight's Grand Prix at Circuit. Been quite an all-rounder in terms of its history as a track and in Formula 1. Of course, the popular testing layout for many, many years in the real-life championship, because it's just got such a nice blend of all different sort of corners, high speed, medium speed, and low speed corners. So it's a real test in terms of car performance, but of course it's all equal performance here in the RDL, so it all comes down to driver skill. Of course, Grumio has been top of the roost in that sense for a good couple of years now. PJ completes his first flying lap across the line, 1:14.3. I should think we'll see that lap beaten by one of the front runners. You see AT starting his first flying lap. Of course, AT 3rd place in Monaco as Imri goes fastest, and there goes Huff into first place. Half a tenth separating those 2 pretty much, which is over half a tenth. You're looking at just under 600 between the pair of them, between Huff and Imri on your front row. Ericsson to P4 for Aston Martin, of course, 3 tenths off of PJ. Of course, the Audis will be the direct competitors of the Aston Martins in tonight's race. Next car to the line, I believe, is one of the Alpines. That's Harrison going to the last corner here. And Harrison looking for another good run after a 4th place finish in Monaco last week. P3 for Harrison on the board early on. Of course, sits in P4 in the Drivers' Championship. It's currently 68 points to his name, which is a very reasonable return after the first third of the season, 3 of which were podium finishes, but still, as it was half a few weeks ago, yet to sort of break the ceiling and take that first RDL victory. So we see how he handles in tonight's race, and we'll see what he's got for our usual front runners. Of course, Huff still trying to keep himself up front in the championship, but a 9th place finish in Monaco last week, not what he wanted. Of course, the weekend didn't really go to plan as a whole in that sense. So P9 from just the 2 points, which puts him now 36 points behind Dan in the standings. Dan's, of course, led the way, I believe, since the race in China. So a long way back now. We're looking at Dan holding the lead for the last 7 weeks as Huff completes his first complete run. JB in P4, Curtis into P3. Of course, the Haas drivers seem poised to continue on their good qualifying run in the last couple of weeks. Of course, those 2, P7, P8 in the championship, Curtis and TJ, and very much looking like best of the rest away from the top 3 teams. They scored 93 points so far this season. That's 47 for Curtis and 46 for TJ. So 1 point separating those 2. Of course, Curtis with the podium finish in Miami a few weeks ago, and looking for more results like that. Of course, 4th place in Canada, but 14th last week in Monaco, while TJ came through for a 5th place finish to drag himself right up next to his teammate in the standing. So plenty close between those two, as TJ himself sits in P7 from his first lap, AT in P5, JB there in P4. Again, JB, 13th place finish in Monaco last week, has only scored points at 3 of the opening 8 Grand Prix. So looking to add a 4th in tonight's race. Williams currently sitting P7 now in the, sitting in P8 in the constructors, having been jumped by Ferrari in last week's race. JB into the pit lane though, and we've seen half the pack coming through. They sit their time. See, of course, we are missing a few drivers as it stands right now. Of course, we've got both Cadillacs in the field. They see Obsessed and Courtney, both Ferraris in the field, unlike last week. Imri there in P2, Cott down in P12, but I'm guessing backed off or made a mistake on his first lap, went back and recharged and going fresh. I think I saw an 11-second improvement from Cott there. So yeah, plenty to gain from that first effort from the former RDL race winner. Because we're not missing either one of the McLarens. Webbsy not with us in tonight's race, one of the Red Bulls missing, and we're missing 2 more from there. Ben Spittles in the Alpine again, not with us. So Harrison is the lone Enstone machine in tonight's race. A bit of a slide there from Cox. He makes his way in through turn number 11. Of course, a number of straight mode zones. I mean, just the 2 straight mode zones on the circuit. There was 3 as far as I remember in the real life. On the real life circuit, according to the check map I've got on the right side of my screen. As Cott rounds turn number 14 to complete his next effort. It's a 1 minute 14.602, so among the pack now, but still only 12th fastest. So Cott's got a lot of work to do, it seems, here in the qualifying session to come in the next 10 minutes or so, and from there, the 33-lap race. Of course, last season, this is one of the races that was one of our 100% Grand Prix, won by Grumio in just under half an hour. An hour and a half, rather. The race is going to be about 40 minutes shorter, obviously, as we run the half distance. JB down to P7. I believe had a run through the gravel as far as I'm made away from my sources. AT in P5 in the Mercedes. Actually in front of his teammate Grumio from his first lap. So Grumio 1:13.845. I'm guessing Grumio not showing his hand just yet in terms of raw pace around the circuit. Lucky Lambert there in P11, 1:14.528. Down by about 6/10 on teammate JB. Of course, those two tied in terms of the head-to-head battle as teammates in the Drivers' Championship. 22 points each, putting Williams on a very solid 44. And as I say, 3 points behind Ferrari, who have now jumped them thanks to Imri's result last week. So 6th place for Imri, of course, in contention late on to try and win the Grand Prix until Grumio's charge away in the final 5 laps, and from there things sort of fell apart for him. So the wait for Imri Monaco continues on for at least another season, but we'll see if he can get himself his 2nd win of the campaign here tonight in Spain. Of course, it's not been the Spanish Grand Prix. We're waiting for that later on in the season when we actually hit the Madrid for the first time in RDL history. That'll be an interesting race, but of course all focus is on the Catalan part of the country. Imri now goes fastest. He puts himself up by almost a 10th and a half over Huff in 2nd place. Huff's on a lap, and he's improved by a full 10th in the first sector. So as it stands right now, if he was to tack that first sector onto his first lap, he'd be in front of Imri by a single 1,000th of a second. So tight margins here up front on the protected front row as Imri holds on to provisional pole at least for a little bit longer as Huff rounds turn 9 across that blind right hand, easy to go wide, easy to get wrong, and you've got a nice big gravel trap waiting for you should that happen. Huff ends the 2nd sector, now 2/10 up and looking poised to take back P1, unless there should be some sort of change or some sort of mistake in these last 3 corners. Of course, the circuit formerly, the 3rd sector looked much different, but of course the Spanish Grand Prix organisers, now the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix organisers, running the MotoGP layout. As Dan goes 3rd fastest there, Dan's first lap of the evening. Huff will go on top. He's lost a fair bit of time there. Huff down a fair bit, and now sits 3 thousandths off Imri, so wasn't as strong in the final sector, and it's cost him there by just again, let's say tight margins is the name of the game here in qualifying, as it always has been in the RDL, even with the other battery regulations. Everyone obviously has had a fair bit of time to figure those out. Curtis still holding on quite strongly in P4. He's about a 10th and a half in front of Harrison in P5. And it's AT and Grumio P6, P7. JB in 8th, TJ 9th, and HB Cook rounds at your top 10, of course. Cook still coming off that victory a few weeks ago in Miami. Podiums in his last 2 races. Didn't race in Monaco last week, but VCarb now completely back in the race and ready to rumble. Into the pit lane. P10 for HB Cook. Will look to his teammate Ben. Ben across the line there. P17 for him. 1:14.637. Only Cott, only 10th Cannon's but this time slower, and Courtney Goblin yet to make it up the pit lane. Cott about, well, literally a quarter of a tenth in front. Ericsson's ahead of him, P15. It's all quite close in the 1:14s here. I see 10th Cannon there. 10th shooting into 3rd place. Let's not forget, you think back to the qualifying for this race last season. Again, it was short qualifying last time. 10th and Alvar were the two the two highlights of qualifying. Alvar, again, one of those drivers not with us in tonight's race, but 10th is making her presence known here. And obviously, save for last week in Monaco, she's had a resurgence from the races lasting from Bahrain to Canada. 4th, and then 6th. Granted, a 12th place finish last week left a lot to be desired after a disconnect on the final lap for 10th. Actually, not a disconnect, rather. It was an issue with her wheel, but she's very clearly got it fixed, and she's back on business here in Barcelona. So fantastic to see from 10th, and that was hopefully helped McLaren to try and re-extend their lead in the Constructors' Championship. They sit now just 4 points in front of Mercedes after the Silver Arrows double podium in Monaco last week. So things close once again in the top 2 in the Constructors. Red Bull some 60 points back from 2nd place. They sit in P3 with Websy and Huff. Websy, as I say, not in the race, so it's down to Huff to get the points. Six minutes to go here, and getting closer and closer to the final runs of the session. Obviously, Alvar, Websy, and Ben Spittle's not in tonight's race, so those teams by themselves in that case. And Alpine, I look in particular at Harrison, who could be under pressure to score tonight, given that it's quite a similar situation to the top of the championship for Alpine. VCarb sitting just 4 points back with both cars in the race, so the advantages that can be played sometimes with just the attendance rates in league racing sometimes is always fantastic to watch, and things are looking quite close as they are right now. It's Grumio, there he goes, and that's what we came to see, the usual sort of arrival from Grumio late in the session, and now puts himself a 10th up on Imri. It's a 1.4 seconds covering the entire grid, but just the top 12 covered by within a second, so it's still awfully close, and that bodes well for the Grand Prix. And we'll see, of course, how the battery plays into it. Of course, every circuit we go to this season is a new opportunity to see how the ERS plays out. Of course, the new modes for this year. But Grumio firmly on top, and he's looking for win number 5 of the season. But if Dan can finish 2nd, that lead only gets cut down to 14 points. So Dan still holds a fairly healthy lead going to Austria and then to Silverstone. But again, both tracks where Grumio has been fantastic in recent seasons. But Austria can always be a bit more of a bull ring in that sense. Not just because it is called, obviously, the Red Bull Ring, but it's always been a bit of a coliseum over there in the Styrian Hills. So look forward to that next week. That'll be taking place on the 17th of August. As Curtis enters the pit lane here at the end of his 2nd run. P7 for him now, and looking for a bit more, I should think, on his final lap later on in a minute or two. JB is on his out laps. I'm guessing trying to get his last run in, beating the traffic at the end of the session. Dan, same thing. He sits there on the 3rd row, and with Grumio on provisional pole, that won't bode too well for Dan. Of course, he can only lose the championship lead if Grumio wins and Dan finishes outside of the top 7 or 8. If he finishes P9, then Grumio may nab the lead by, I believe, just 3 points. So things awfully close in that sense. And Huff will be looking to try and get back into the fight as well. He's there in P3, so looking quite good right now. But of course, we'll be looking to try and close on Grumio. He's 15 points behind the reigning 11-time champion as Ericsson retires from the session. The lone retiree of the session so far. And everyone's put a lap time in except for Courtney Goblin. We'll wait to see if he gets himself out on track in the last minute or two of this session. As final runs are starting to get underway here. TJ is on his last run here, but is going to charge up his battery and go again after what I'm guessing was a mistake in the first sector, because the lap's still valid, so no concern there. JB, as I say, is on his outlap. He's going for that final run. Lucky up a quarter of a second, so his teammate looking quite good to try and potentially jump JB in the order as he rounds turn 12. Into the final 2 turns, through turns 13 and 14. A lot of speed carried through there, 150 miles per hour on corner exit. Lucky towards the line, will put himself nicely into the top 10 there by a thousandth over JB. That's awfully close between the pair of them. So JB's not got to gain much to get himself back in the top half. But of course, that depends on who else gains around him. HP Cook's on his last lap as he runs in towards turn number 3. Turn 4, sorry, but he's down by 11 thousandths, so still a bit to be desired, a bit left on the table in terms of lap time for HP Cook in that first sector. We'll see if he can make it up in sector 2. A lot of the front runners now on the outlaps. Grumio still in his garage, not leaving just yet. I'm guessing he's going to leave it late. AT, his teammate, is out on circuit and about to begin what will likely be his final lap. Half of the first of the runners in the top 5 to get onto his last lap. Imrie and 10th Cannon both waiting. 10th starts hers. And here's the 2 McLarens again doing that sort of tandem play here. And they'll have enough time for both drivers to get laps in as 10th gives Dan the tow going into turn 1. But 10th more or less sacrificing her lap, it seems, here to help her teammate get up higher in the order. HP Cook P13 here. Didn't find anything on that lap. And was almost a 10th off his previous effort. Obsessed Gamer there in P16 as of right now on his return. And 4 tenths up in the first sector. So could potentially put himself perhaps peeking towards the top 10 with if he maintains where he is right now. Top 3 right now, covered by less than a 10th as things stand. Grumio is back on the racetrack. Imrie and Huff are both on laps. Imrie is down the first sector as Huff is down in the second. JB retires. Not getting a lap in. Back in the pit lane for him. Dan is in through turn 12. 2 corners to go now. Yellow flags out in front for one of the Alpines backing off there, or the lone Alpine of Harrison. Dan comes towards the line. What can he do? Dan slots himself in, but just a 100th off of Grumio for pole. And that's with Grumio having a lap to come still. Imrie's got to get around to the line. Huff is on his last lap now. 10th Cannon just crossing to start her last lap as the see the Cadillac. I'm guessing that is of Ipsos pulling over. Yes, it is. Connie Goblin's about to come across the line. 1:15.3 for him. 10 seconds to go. Grumio is starting his last lap. Imrie started his last lap. So the fight for pole is very much on between the 2 drivers who will be likely to be the last ones to get the lap times in. The checker flag comes up. Just saw Ben cross the line. Some start one more lap. But backing out of it. And you saw Lucky Lambert then. P10 for Lucky. And found a lot more time over his teammate. Now 86 thousandths clear. As opposed to just the 1 over JB. Who still finds himself in P11. But could lose out if PJ's a good last sector. In front of him, you can see Curtis coming to the line. Curtis down in sector 2. And it stays. It improves a bit. But not enough to get him any higher. As PJ hangs on to P12. Next car to the line will be the Red Bull of Huff. Coming into the pit lane. And whether the lap was there, I doubt it was, given he pitted. Harrison towards the line. What can he do? Harrison doesn't improve. Stays in P6. They come the 2 McLarens next to the line. 10th is invalidated, so P5 is best for her. Dan stays in second place. Grumio up by 83 thousandths. Imrie coming to the line behind. Imrie's getting a big head of steam here. Grumio goes faster still, but can Imrie top him at the last? Towards the line. Oh, he's missed out. Missed out by about a 10th and a quarter, but got himself onto that front row, crucially. And pushing Dan and Huff, Grumio's main rivals in the Drivers' Championship, onto row 2. 10th starts P5, Harrison P6, Curtis, AT, TJ and Lucky on top 10. Caught on his return P11, Obsessed on his return P15. As Ben's the last car to get over the line and get back into the pit lane to cap this session off. Retires the car. And that will do it. So Grumio then will take pole for the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. Again, a fantastic qualifying session. Devoid slightly of underdogs compared to last season, but still a fantastic session nonetheless. Grumio on pole. He'll lead Imrie for that long charge to turn 1. Dan starts from 3rd place. Huff P4, 10th P5. And it's Harrison, Curtis, AT, TJ and Lucky Yod top 10. And that'll do us then for qualifying. And we shall return in a matter of moments here for the start of the Grand Prix. Welcome back to Barcelona and welcome to round 9 of the Races Driving League Season 21, the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix, about a minute or so away from getting underway for the formation lap. And it should be an exciting race, but again, one that has been dominated by our pole sitter in recent seasons. Grumio victorious in 4 of his last 5 attempts here at the circuit and looking to go 5 out of 6 with a victory today. And the only driver that stopped him in the last 5 seasons is not on the grid. That's obviously been Landlord from season 17. So quite a while ago since Grumio has been beaten here. We'll see if that changes with a number of new faces, perhaps with a chance to upend him here today. A look at your circuit, of course. The circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya unchanged since 2023, running the sort of most GP layout with the wider turn 11 and, of course, the 2 flat-out right-handers of turns 13 and 14. A number of different straight mode zones on the circuit, all of which we use to take advantage of with the use of the ERS as well. Obviously, there's a lot of long straights around this circuit. There's a lot of high-speed corners, a lot of medium-speed corners, a lot of low-speed corners. 14 in all, and it should make for a very all-round race here with no chances of weather interrupting us. So it should be an exciting race tonight. Of course, Grumio will lead Imri on the charge down towards the first corner, and that is going to be a very contentious one. Now we can see... we'll see exactly as to who's got the speed in tonight's race. So I think Grumio stands out as the favourite, and Imri, who has very generously donated to the chat there, looking to try potentially upend him on the race start. We've seen these two come to blows in the past on the getaway here in races, so we'll hopefully avoid that for today's race. But Grumio starts on pole. Then have a look at your starting tyres. Mediums for everyone in the race starts, and no variance strategy for this first stint. Imri starts from P2 again. Disappointment last week in Monaco, looking to try and redeem himself with the win here tonight. Dan starts from 3rd place. His aim to maintain that 21-point lead in the Drivers' Championship, if not to extend it over Grumio. If Grumio wins and Dan finishes 2nd, that gap drops to 14. Huff in P4, P9 from last week in Monaco. Again, another driver seeking redemption and looking to close that 36-point gap to the lead in the championship. 10th Cannon P5 and looking to reinstate herself as a force among the front runners. Of course, a 2nd season in a row with a fantastic qualifying here in Barcelona. Harrison P6, of course, 4th place from last week and looking to try and close the gap on the championship leaders, as well as try and get himself away from HB Cook in P5. Curtis in P7 and still leading the line for Haas. Those guys still very much best of the rest as of so far this season. That continues on this qualifying session. 88th place, 3rd place last week in Monaco, but look to return to the midfield in tonight's race and look to be leading the midfield, if not challenging the front runners as well. TJ P9, again, ring up the rear for Haas, but looking to perform. Obviously, 1 point separating him from his teammate in the standings. Lucky P10, he's tied with JB in P12 in the starting order, and obviously those guys fighting for P11, P12 in the championship. Koch returns for Ferraris in the full-time seat going forward to replace Pope alongside Imri. JB, as I say, in P12. HB Cook in P13, still a few weeks back from that victory in Miami and looking to get himself another point scored to push himself in front of Harrison in the drivers. PJ in P14, of course, both Audis in tonight's race for the first time since Miami. So That'd be a welcome surprise. Obsessed in P15, making his return to the sport. Return to RDL with Cadillac. Ethan in P16, Ericsson, Ben and Cottony rounding them out. All of them looking for points in particular. The Audis and Aston Martins, the ones to try and topple each other. Ericsson alone in that sense. No Alvar on tonight's grid, no Websy, and no Ben Spittles either. So Cottony's Cadillac takes his place at the back of the grid as the race is about to get underway. Barcelona-Catalunya is about to rock and roll here for 33 laps as the lights come on for round 9 of the championship. Grumio and Imri on your front row. Here they come. Lights out, foot to the floor, and we are racing here in Spain. Good start from Grumio, good start from Dan as well. On the left-hand side, going down towards turn 1. Long race to the first corner. Dan and Imri side by side. Dan might try and sneak on the outside if he's lucky. Grumio defends the inside, going in through turn 1 and through turn 2. Covers off the McLaren quite nicely as everyone keeps it nice and tidy in these first few corners. Imri challenging down the inside. Bit of contact there as both drivers almost forcing each other wide. Imri goes back through. There goes Huff on the inside. Dan losing out 2 more places. A bit of contact for the back as far as I can see. I think there might have been a visual glitch there. Grumio leads the way. Imri gets himself back in a second. There goes Dan to the inside. Big dive from the championship leader. Takes P2 back. And Imri trying to switch back on corner exit if he can get himself close enough. They're side by side. Going up towards turn 7. All this is what Grumio wants to see as Imri pulls clear of Dan once again. And Grumio unable to pull away as much as you might like here. He's only about half a second in front. So the cars behind will be in play in the way of overtake when that comes into play at the end of this first lap. The overtake line coming just before the final corner, turn 14, as Cop takes the place over JB, of course, a former driver on his return into tonight's race on his first full-time lap of the season. Makes a pass over the long-time veteran in the Williams. HB Cook around the outside, fighting 10 had a disastrous start here from P5 to P12. So she's got really shuffled back, and now she's got work to do in this Grand Prix. Grumio comes through to lead the first lap of the evening. Imri in second place, and Dan in P3. Fastest lap then for the Mercedes as they charge down towards turn 1. All single file, save for a move being made there by Obsessed, trying to challenge Ben towards turn 1. Down towards the right hand they come. Ben keeps himself in front using overtake. Might try and challenge PJ if he gets up close enough into turn 1. Not quite, but you can see Lucky making a pass here on AT. AT side by side with TJ now. And the Mercedes driver drops 2 places. JB passing Cot on the inside and everything. It's all kicking off here in Spain. It's a fantastic start and very exciting on this first lap and a half here as the top 5 all settling in. It's Grumio from Imri, Dan, Huff and Curtis into P5. So in terms of your position change up front, have a look here. Only Curtis getting 2 places in the top 5. And you see, obviously, 10th losing 7. Biggest dropper so far. Lucky's gained 3 places. He, along with Ben, are the biggest gainers from the first lap and a bit as they charge through turn 9 for the second time. And Imri's now he's settled in. Want to try and close on Grumio. You have to use the overtake to his benefit and try and get himself in front of the current race leader. And, of course, the reigning champion and defending winner of this Grand Prix. In they come now through turn number 12. Dan falling away a little bit here from Imri, but has more battery to go as well. Grumio obviously has only got standard ERS, whereas when Imri deploys boostman, of course, he'll get the extra power from having the overtake boost on him as he sets fastest lap. And by quite a way, a big head of steam going towards the first corner, and Imri looking to take the race lead, and he will take the race lead into turn 1. The Ferrari man moves up in front for the first time today. Dan still sits there in 3rd place, almost a full second back. He's 8 tenths off of Grumio in P2 right now. Huff in 4th place, Curtis P5. And Harrison P6. Let's not forget, Grumio and Imri came to blows briefly in last season's Grand Prix in Barcelona, if memory serves. Of course, there was a sort of a phase where those two were consistently coming together and having altercations on circuit. But hopefully we'll see less of that this season. We have done so far. But Grumio right on Imri's tail and makes a move to the outside. Now the champion against the challenger, and Imri has to no choice to fall back into line there, and Grumio's completely outplayed in there. So Imri's lead lasts for half a lap, and Grumio back in control once again on lap 3. This allows Dan to close a little bit in too. He's back to being about half second back from second place, make that 6 tenths as the leaders make their way towards turn number 11, through towards turn 10, sorry. It's all single file as of right now. Everyone's sort of settled in, found their rhythm. 10th Cannon now down 8 spots in this Grand Prix. He's been overhauled by HB Cook in P12. Cott still in P11, still chasing JB. He himself has got his mirrors full of the Ferrari in behind. And he looked at AT in P9 to try and push himself forward down a place off the race start. Lucky Lambert into P8, so it's good 4 points going Williams' way. But with Ferrari gaining 18 of them as it stands right now, it could be 25 as this goes live. As Imri tries again into turn 1, but Grumio this time keeps him away. And we're sort of split off into sort of three double car tandems here as Grumio being chased by Imri. Dan and Huff nose to tail about a few tenths back, and from there it's then Curtis and Harrison. And even then it goes down to TJ and Lucky, but the pack starts to open up when JB tries to challenge AT on the inside now to go through turn 4, and AT almost finding the grass on corner exit. Can JB try and clear the Mercedes through turn number 5? Silver Arrow's got the inside line for turns 5, 6, and 7, but JB using a bit of overtake, goes around the outside, quite similar to Grumio on the last lap. And JB again clears, and now finds himself about 8 tenths back from his teammate Lucky Lambert, but may find himself at risk of losing overtake if he falls back anymore. He's going to have to save some battery and try and get himself back into the mix that way. Imri returning to that place where he was, about 4 tenths or so back from Grumio. As the battle continues on, it continues to rage here as Dan still leading Huff. Curtis appears to have got a bit more involved, and Harrison not so far behind either. It's then about 8 tenths back to TJ, almost 9. Lucky and JB will both get overtake boost from the car in front, so that works out quite nicely for them. As 10th Cannon going for a move now, challenging HB Cook down towards the first corner as Imri once again reassumes the lead up front. First car into the pit lane here, it's the Aston Martin of Ericsson. And given he's the lone Aston in the race tonight, this could be a potential death knell for that team very early on in the way of scoring points in this Grand Prix. Still a long way to go. Still got about 28 laps still to run here in Barcelona, but a front wing change in play for that team, and a disappointing start to the race then. Not quite sure who I may have got it, but a wing change and hard tyres on for Ericsson's Aston Martin as Imri now settles into a lead, but Grumio can't quite get, he's got a lot of battery here, but Imri still got a decent amount himself. The battery management has been a bit better from Imri this season compared to last, thanks to the easier recharge rate, but obviously with the easier recharge comes a much quicker deploy rate as well. So plenty to keep an eye on there, as the batteries of course have been the sort of the talking point of both the real life F1 season and the RDL season so far in terms of sort of how these new regs play out within the DLC. But the chase continues here as car number 11 continues to try and close on car 19. Dan not far behind, still in 3rd place and holding quite strong here. No real challenge from Huff from 4th place at the minute. Whether we start seeing this pack behind start to make some moves remains to be seen, but TJ now the second car to be without overtaking this Grand Prix, and now has a mirror full of Lucky Lambert as they charge towards the first corner again. We're on lap 6 now of the Grand Prix, and things are flying by awfully quickly here. No more takers in the pit lane. And let's have a look around, see if there's any sort of damage from anyone else. As 10th Cannon trying to challenge HB Cook, and Cook simultaneously trying to get close to Cott if he can, but to no avail. Obsessed game with their P16 tail of the field as it stands right now. And you can see Cottony Goblin, as far as I see, without an end plate. No, sorry, I'm getting myself wrong. He's not got damage, that's okay. So I'm not entirely sure what Ericsson got the damage from, as Dan now being challenged by Huff for 3rd place, and Huff took it briefly for Dan to come fighting back. And Dan won't try what, Huff won't need to try what Grumio did a couple of laps ago. HB Cook passing Cott as they race for P11, 1st place outside of the points. AT about 7 tenths in front and still hanging on to the train here with JB, Lucky and TJ. TJ almost 2 seconds back now from the top 6. But Huff appearing to be a bit more impatient now behind the wheel of that Red Bull, looking to try and get himself in front of Dan sooner rather than later. But Imri now comfortable and leading a second lap, complete lap of the afternoon. Does Grumio come back at him, or will he let Imri run his battery down? He's keeping the Ferrari honest here, so no one really able to escape off into the sunset this early on. As there goes Lucky Lambert making the pass on TJ. Lucky flying here in these first couple of laps. Again up 3 spots once more. JB also up 3 places, so Williams appear to have had the best possible start to this Grand Prix they could have asked for. And TJ now separating the 2 Grove-based cars. JB a bit wide there, but a fantastic run through turn 3 and towards 4. JB from a long way back on the inside there as they charge in through turn 4. And JB gets clear. JB the biggest gain now, up 4 places. And whether it stops there, whether he can try and take Lucky, we'll see if that can happen. We'll see if the 2 teammates can try and battle each other for position. This could be quite an interesting scrap between those 2 cars. Back up front, things staying as they were when we last left them. Huff yet to make another move on Dan. That could change on the main straight as there goes AT, dive into the inside TJ, but to no avail. TJ having been dispatched now by both of the Williams cars, I think on the same lap as far as I can see. No boost mode for TJ, and it's costing him right now as AT with the extra power closes the gap. But TJ will get overtake back now, and Lucky with the car without it, and not a lot of battery to spare either as the lead train snakes its way towards turn 1. JB makes the pass. Look what a start it's been from JB today. 5 places gained as Grumio now retaking the lead from Imri up front. They're side by side here through turns 1 and 2. Imri slightly off circuit. Both cars are there, and Grumio goes around the outside with overtake to his advantage. But Imri not letting them go just yet. They're still not clear. And Imri gets himself back in front, but might he run too deep on corner exit? No, he won't. He maintains his line. Imri gets himself back in front. He really wants that second win of the season, but Grumio seems poised to try and take the lead from him. And he saw him sneak for a second on the inside, trying to force Imri into an error. As Curtis and Harrison still fighting over P5 back there. They're at risk of perhaps falling away from the top 4. They seem a lot closer now than they were a lap ago. But Curtis and Harrison very much keeping up. And Curtis is doing a fantastic job here, leading things for Haas as TJ gets himself back around Lucky. But in that, he's now a second and a half back from JB, who is completely bolted thanks to the overtake boost. There goes AT to the outside of Lucky. And HB Cook, 10th Cannon, and PJ Kelly looking to try and get involved in behind. Obsessed Gamer in P14 now, and not too far back. Cots lost a few places. 18 now passing Lucky. They're side by side through turn 13. And the Silver Arrow jumps back in front as Taras into the pit lane. First stopper from that lead pack to come in. And we are sort of nearing the stage now where the medium tyres might start to fall off. I'm thinking 2-stop here for the majority of drivers in this Grand Prix. Those who can go a bit better on their tyres might go a bit longer and try and do a 1. I doubt they can work. But we'll see here. We'll see how long they can take them in the first stint, and then we'll get a better idea from there. Huff still looking for a way around Dan. 3 cars in the pit lane here. Harrison, PJ, and Ben all looking at hard tyres, at least from what I can see. Actually, I said mediums for Ben, scrap that. So a change made then away from what has been the preferred tyre of choice from a first stop so far. Ben then into P18 and emerge in front of Ericsson by a few seconds. So he goes over the curb. AT making further progress now. Side by side with TJ to go through turn 9. And AT again pulling clear. So while JB sits by himself in 6th place, Lucky's fallen down to P11. So Williams all of a sudden had their race turn around on its head once more. As Obsessed goes to the outside and his return to the RDL as a full-time driver, side by side with one of the more experienced drivers in the league. And Lucky, obviously former champion of the series, keeps the Cadillac at bay. Of course, Cadillac sitting P9 in the Drivers' Championship thanks to the efforts of Shadow Rain. It'll be down to Obsessed to try and keep that train rolling. And Courtney if he can as well. Courtney in P15 now. The last of the cars yet to make their first pit stop. But that'll change as we've got a few more in the pits. Courtney won't join them, so we'll see him gain a few places here. As Lucky and AT both in. Both cars looking at medium tyres, it seems. So I'm thinking we're probably looking at potentially medium hard in this race. For that 2-stop. Perhaps medium hard, medium for those drivers who have pitted onto the hard tyre already. I'm thinking looking at Harrison there to try and go longer in his second stint. Imri still leading Grumio here. The gap isn't comfortable, not by any means, but he's still doing a good job. Obviously maintaining his battery, but Grumio might try and challenge me up towards turn number 10, try and force the Ferrari into an error. Grumio locks up there, but Imri does go off his line. And Grumio using his battery can now try and sneak on the outside. Almost worked. I like the tactic and just sort of the wily movements of the 11-time champ, but now as a result, Dan's right on his tail. He's managed to break free from Huff at least for a matter of moments as Grumio now pulls into the pit lane. And the tyres he goes for could alter the course of the race for everyone else in the field. Or at least for these front runners. Imri now unchallenged for the race leaders to go towards turn 1. We're on lap 11 now, almost a third of the way through the Grand Prix when they come to cross the line. Grumio and TJ both in. Grumio onto a set of hard tyres. Where does Harrison emerge? Harrison, of course, was P6 in the train. Where is Grumio? There is the Mercedes, and the extra laps. Harrison has closed that gap down massively and may well jump the champion at turn 1. And he does indeed. So Harrison on the fresher tyres, what does this mean for his race going forward? Because he's now, as I say, he's been on those fresh hard tyres for 2 laps. And has been gaining time as Grumio tries to challenge him on the inside. These two have got the freshest tyres and may well establish an advantage of some kind over these cars who are staying on the medium tyre up front. Connolly Goblin continues battle raging on in his mirrors as Harrison sticks it in on the inside, holds his ground against the champion. Yellow flags are out in behind. That's a slow car, I believe. Oh, there's debris gone off. Not quite sure as to who's run afoul of that braking marker. No damage done to the cars around it. So we'll carry on then. Stay green. Grumio has now jumped Harrison. As Imri now takes the pit lane, but I'm thinking this pack may fall behind a little bit now. Hard tyres on for Imri. He's away. How's he done as the race leader? Because he's been unable to establish an advantage as Cott comes into the pit lane. Where are Grumio and Harrison? And there they are. Imri to the pit exit. I think might get jumped potentially. It's going to be quite close as Grumio dispatches with Cottony, as does Harrison. But Imri comes out back in front of both cars. So pace has been strong then for your most recent race leader. Imri puts himself back into net P1. The question now being, how does the other half of the group hit? Dan, Huff, and Curtis still in the top 3. They're JB P4, Cook in P5, and it's 10th, Obsessed, Ethan. Those are your runners yet to pit while still in that top 8. Cottony Goblin yet to stop too, but of course that's been jumped by the 3 former leaders. But Imri has played this quite nicely. He's now got the freshest tyres of these 3. And we'll see what the leaders do this time. Dan has still got Huff right behind him. And these 2 have been sort of unable to really fight each other properly in this Grand Prix so far. Huff's only made the one move, really. Got in front briefly as Dan comes to the pit lane, but neither one of the 2 cars around him follow him. So in comes your championship leader. And we'll get a sense as to whether the strategies work for those drivers who pitted sooner. Hard tyres on for Dan. And he is away. Here comes Imri from the final corner, breaking the toe from Grumio. Cannon in the pit lane. Where is Dan? There is Dan. And Dan gets jumped by all of them. But keeps himself quite nicely in with the pack. And now on the fresher tyres, we'll try and move up and challenge Harrison, I should think. Huff and Curtis, the 2 left out in circuit. See Obsessed there in P5. Good job from him so far. And runs those points paying places, but as I say, yet to make that first stop of the Grand Prix. And I'm guessing these guys trying to go longer on their medium tyres, Huff and Curtis. Of course, Huff won only a few weeks ago. Looking for win number 2, but as it seems, the longer these guys are staying out, Imri must have found the sweet spot in some kind of just kept this pace up being the lead car. But those guys who are in the train may lose out. And Huff was definitely in that train. Curtis now stays out and he will leave the Grand Prix on to lap 14. As it stands right now, Imri's train going through turn 12. It's been about the same so far in terms of where these guys are when the car who got focused on pitting comes in. Around the last corner. And we'll see Huff on pit exit. Here he comes. And there goes Imri before he's even reached the exit line. And Cott gets the first penalty of the evening. Multiple warnings. Huff falling behind the train by a fair bit here. And strategy may not have worked in his favour. These guys on the fresher tyres mean that they'll likely catch Curtis perhaps even before he reaches his pit box. You never know. The exact gap between Imri and Curtis, 16 to 17 seconds. Yes, I think that's honestly a very possible possibility. But with only JB, Curtis, and Ethan yet to pit, focus starts now to shift back to our net race leaders. Imri in control, and the circuit that's been sort of relatively difficult for the leaders to overtake at so far. The only real change has been the changes for the lead between Grumio and Imri in terms of this train up front. Obviously, things have been a bit spicier in the midfield. And Ericsson gets a penalty. 3 seconds of him again. Things not looking good for Aston Martin as of right now. And if Audi can get one of their cars in the points and try and move themselves out of the tie for 10th place, as all 3 remaining cars now into the pit lane, and Curtis reached his pit box, and Imri will emerge in front and reclaim the lead of the Grand Prix again. And this time with a fairly decent advantage, about 3/4 of a second. But Curtis is going to rejoin with Huff, and those 2 have got some work to do as AT and PJ draw closer. So with pit stops completed for everyone now in the field, we have reached our true order as we near the halfway stage. I'm thinking for these runners who are not on the hard tyres, most likely the 1 stop is to play. Unless we get a safety car of some kind, which may change the game. As there goes Dan to the outside of Harrison. And using over second corner exit, both cars using it. Harrison's got more battery, got more of a push on the inside line through turn 7. They're quite close to contact. And these two, no strangers to fight each other. Think back to Dan in China, fighting Harrison, of course, in very different conditions in that race. Oh, Grumio wide there. And the champion off circuit. And that allowed Dan into P2. What's just happened to Grumio there? Grumio falls down to P3, and Emery will be seeing that in his mirrors and thinking, joyous day. 1.7 seconds the gap now between him and Dan in second place, and that might leave Dan, Grumio and Harrison to squabble amongst themselves while Emery begins to establish an advantage. That might have been just what the Ferrari driver needed. As he enters turn 1, Grumio getting Dan back towards turn 1. Moves himself back ahead, but Dan will be looking to try and fight now. He's here to play. And darting from side to side, trying to find an opening. Grumio with overtake, but with low battery. And Dan around the outside. Into turn 4 they go. Dan clears his long-time championship rival. And again, the more if Dan can get himself in front, the more he can try and maintain that lead in the standings. And again, the more these three fight, the more Huff and Curtis might find their way back into the equation. But with Imri now 2 seconds in front, the pace looks to be there for him right now. And at the halfway stage, in a race we thought Grumio would dominate, it's Imri in control right now. And Grumio down in third place is Dan. We set to try and keep him busy as the fight for the Championship League gets closer and closer. Again, if Dan can maintain things where they are now, it's a 3-point game for him, leading to the gap goes up to 24 in the Drivers' Championship. And Imri, with the win, may catapult himself a good sort of 2 or 3 places, maybe even 4, depending on where AT finishes. He gains about 17 points on AT. It's actually been meant to jump him. I think he'll only get himself up to P7 as things stand right now, but still that's still quite a good gain. 2.5 now the gap. Further back, we'll see how things are shaping up as JB Racer trying to challenge PJ into turn 1. TJ passing Lucky. HP Cook might follow him through. Double whammy for Lucky, who sort of was up there earlier on the Grand Prix, but his race has taken a dive so far. He's now down 3 spots. It could be 4 as Obsessed Gamer tries the inside. And fantastic instincts there from the returnee in the Cadillac, and Obsessed finds himself in P13 once again, trying to chase those points paying places as PJ and JB side by side. JB back out front again into 8th place. 4 points going his way as it stands right now. Good for Williams. And trying to close the gap to VCOB. We've got no drivers in the points right now. Cook in P12, Ben in P17. Huff now back on the tail of Harrison. Curtis doesn't appear to be having as much luck in trying to close the gap down. But all of a sudden we've got 4 cars now squabbling in the chase for P2. We're on lap 18 now of the Grand Prix, and Imri is expanding his lead to almost 3 seconds. He's got things just how he wants them up front right now. Bit of contact there as Harrison gives a bit of a tap to Grumio as they run in through turns 1 and 2. Huff in line behind. Might he try and sneak a move with overtake? Harrison rather closing the gap. Tighter line compared to Grumio. I doubt he'll go for a send. Close to contact. Huff locks up ever so slightly, trying to avoid the Alpine, but now finds his way through on the inside, but the outside for turn 5. Contact between the 2 full-time rookies. Obviously, he's not really correct to call Huff a rookie, even he's been here for quite a while now in the league, but in his first full-time season, we'll put it that way. Same thing for Harrison. And these two have integrated themselves among this lead train quite nicely in their first 8 full-time races. And Huff is looking like a championship challenger in a few respects. Dan keeping Grumio quiet, 6-7 tenths the gap as of right now. All while Imri continues to stretch that lead out front. It's all single file right now. Huff into 4th, Huff holding on to 4th place now. Lucky Lambert into the pit lane here. Whether we're looking towards potentially those second stops for those few runners who are still on their second sets of medium tyres. So for AT, for Cotton, for Lucky, we'll likely see changes onto sets of hards to run to the end. And that'll cost them track position, but obviously with fresher tyres, we'll see if they can come back. AT in particular, as he forces JB towards the inside there, going into turn 4. JB stuck in line behind, but he will gain a place should AT pit, which I imagine he will do at some stage. And from there, it's about 4 seconds to Curtis. I doubt that JB can catch him, but you never know. With the right permutation, things going right in front of him. And these 5 together again, P2 to P6. Curtis, the only car who's not within a second of the car in front in that little train. He's 1.3 back from Harrison, but closing the gap slowly but surely. And next lap round, I think might get him someone's overtake. If not this lap, as Grumio makes the pass on Dan there. Going for it through turn 13, from what I'm seeing. Very aggressive stuff. 3.7 the gap. Now, Imrie could get a penalty and maintain his lead. Huff is quite close to Dan and makes his move to the inside. Plenty of speed with overtake. 210 miles an hour. He's there on the inside, but Dan outbreaks him. And JB now passing 18 to 1. Same thing for Obsessed. Further back, he's passing TJ. Again, there's no boost mode. No overtake, sorry. And TJ down 4 spots. Lucky down 6 now, that pit stop. And I'm looking at Obsessed. If he can try and drop TJ and try and close the gap to Cook and 10th in front, whether there's an outside chance, perhaps Obsessed getting a point on return, that'd be impressive to see. And Ericsson, second penalty of the evening, sorry. He's on 6 seconds now. Yellow flag in the second sector. That is Cott is going to round of some kind. Had a spin, I'm thinking, and has lost his end plate completely on the left side. So likely we'll need to pit to replace that. And Cott's return to a full-time seat. Not going to plan here, but at the other end of the order, his teammate now 13 laps away from win number 6 of his career, and it's win number 2 of the season. Harrison in the pit lane now. And what could that mean here for the... we're still looking likely a 2-stop, but I thought these guys would try and go for the 1. Harrison's move here. A number of cars coming in. The 1-stop perhaps then, as expected, not to be as viable. Hard tyres back on for Harrison. Fresh set for him. He's going to re-emerge in what looks like P12. So we may see everyone pit one last time in this Grand Prix. You see Imrie, who's now got a nice cushion to cars behind, which can only be improved if Dan can get up to try and fight Grumio. But do any of these guys come into the pits? Do they sort of follow what Harrison's done? Caught in the pit lane there. Wing change and hard tyres on to go to the end. Disappointing stuff for Cott so far in today's race. And Obsessed, those pit stops now in P9. So looking perhaps at a point for Cadillac on return. But of course, may need to make a stop of his own too. Imrie stays out. Anything from any of the leaders here? Curtis fastest lap there. And he is still sort of keeping himself quite constant in terms of that gap. Granted, he's fallen back a bit on the straight here. I think Huff's used some overtake. But Curtis has got overtake this time. So he's going to try and get himself involved. And try and get himself back, perhaps he's fighting for the podium places. So, thinking back then on Harrison's move to come to the pit lane. He's in P12 now. Yellow flag's out. Let's cut around again. Recovers the car, but likely to get lapped by his teammate if he needs to pit again. He's staying out. So no damage done to that car. Just a minor slide. And Huff going wide there. I'm guessing a lockup at turn 10, which must be the same thing for Grumio earlier. Now, do we see anyone into the pit lane? Imrie stays out. I'm guessing these guys are all going to try and make the 1-stop work. So why did Harrison pit then? I mean, he had a top 5 finish and was guaranteed. See JB there in P6. Looking at a big 8 points for the team right now to put them firmly on 52. Help them really close that gap to VCARB. That gap will be just 12 points if things stay as they are. As Williams will be seeking a look at, likely at P7 in the standings. As Harrison fastest lap. So he's got the pace on these tyres. The question is, will anyone else join him? Because if they do join him, then I dare say that Harrison could put himself closer perhaps to Imri than he is to Grumio, Dan, Huff. Just based on pure pace of the pit stops. We've seen the benefits in the past from a number of drivers that sort of pitting earlier and putting on those fresh tyres has helped them quite a lot in chasing down the cars in front. We saw it earlier on in the race. But of course, Imri held his ground in that, but he's losing a bit of time now. The gap's gone from about 3.5 seconds to 2.6, so Grumio closing in. In comes Grumio to the pit lane. And now we'll get an idea exactly as to what the plan is for everyone. Oh, and Grumio penalty there. And that will be huge for the champion. 10 seconds being in the pit lane. He's put on soft tyres to run to the end, though. And I think Grumio's made it quite difficult for him to try and win this race now. Where is Harrison? Harrison is rounding turn 14 now as Grumio hits the pit exit. But Grumio on those soft tyres as Cott's gone around a third time. He's in the gravel. And the VSC's been deployed. And that is going to keep Grumio from coming out in front of Harrison just. But Cott, I think, just stopped waiting for the cars to get around him. Things have briefly slowed down. Who stands to gain from that? Obviously, less time lost from a stop under the VSC. But our first sort of slowdown from the day after 24 laps of racing, or 23 and a half. It'll be 24 laps complete when they cross the line. It'll be 9 laps to go. And the question now is, when does the green flag come back out? Imri stays out. Green flag, there it is. And Huff in the pit lane. He likely won't be able to see what tyres Grumio's put on. Whether he goes to the soft as well. It's a potential play. Dan now 2 seconds back. Curtis into the podium places. And medium tyres waiting for Huff. So our 3 stoppers from this lead pack have all gone for 3 different sets of tyres as Grumio has now dispatched Harrison. But Harrison keeping up. Where does Huff emerge with them? Down the main straight they come. I think they're both going to jump him. And Huff is going to emerge just behind Harrison. Huff with the ideal mix now of both speed and grip. .3, the gap between Imri and Dan up front. The gap to Grumio and that train, 23 seconds. The question is, can the rest of the cars in front stay out that long on the hard tyre? Tyre has been quite heavy so far today. And if these guys need to pit, perhaps that could make things a bit tougher. But should they pit, Grumio will likely assume the lead, and from there, will need to open a 10-second advantage, which I doubt he'll do. So if these guys in front pit, it could be a case of just whoever is second behind Grumio wins the race. But I'm thinking here that Imri, Dan, and Curtis are going to try and go to the end, and just if... I doubt Grumio will catch him, but he is 22 seconds back now. He's about a second in front of Harrison. As you can see, HP Cup closing on 10th Cannon. Those guys using the ones to work themselves back into the top 5. Or top 6, rather. Grumio fastest lap, 1:14.7. Cook on the outside of 10th, trying to challenge through turn 3. What a run around the high side for the V-Carb. And move Cook back into 5th. 10th falls to P6. No overtake to her advantage. Grumio has pulled a second over Huff. And Harrison half a second behind Huff in the Red Bull. Dan is closing the gap now. The gap's almost within 2 seconds for him and Imri. But Dan, if he can get himself in front of him, even right now he's expanding that championship lead by about 14 points, which would bring the gap to 35 between Dan and Grumio. Again, put himself an entire race win in front going to Austria, which could be chaotic to the least. But if he can catch Imri, then that will allow him to, as it stands right now, that allow him to completely double his championship lead. It will just depend on who Grumio can pass before the end. He's got 7 laps to go. Those soft tyres will be quite worn out based on what we're seeing so far today by the end of the Grand Prix. But Grumio is a tyre whisperer, so we could see something special from him. Imrie right now holding a steady lead. That 2 seconds isn't going anywhere as things stand right now. Curtis, 5'1" behind, looking for a second podium of the season. Took one in Miami just 3 weeks ago. His last 3 results in terms of drives have been 6th, 3rd, and 4th. As Koch gets himself a second penalty, it's not been his evening. As Obsessed Gamer now passing Cannon. May have done it around the outside there, but Obsessed doing fantastically for points as it stands right now. He's going to score 8 as things stand. That'll be enough to jump him up to P14 in the championship as things run. And that's just in the first race. That's 8 places, obviously. He's on the tail end of the table now. There are still currently 5 cars who are yet to score this season. But Grumio closing the gap on 10th here. Purple second sector. Pace very much there with those soft tyres. As Dan still chases Imrie. They're going to be just 6 laps to go. And let's not forget, Grumio's got a 10-second penalty as well. So, as things stand right now, he's going to be hauled back to potentially outside of the points. So he's got to get to work. As 10th closes the gap, if 10th can try and keep Grumio busy, that'll be the best thing that Dan can ask for out of his teammate at McLaren. And those guys, with 80 out the points right now and Grumio down the field with a penalty to come, McLaren look like they're in prime position to try and expand their lead once again in the Constructors. But Dan can further increase that if he can get himself up to Imrie, but no luck right now. It's all the Ferrari up front. Imrie's led the majority of the Grand Prix here. It's been a fantastic performance from him so far in this race. He's got to hold it off for 5 laps, and he's opened the lead up a little bit here, up to 2.4 seconds. Dan will close it in quite quickly. This gap sort of yo-yoing constantly. In through turn 13 he comes. Grumio now passing Obsessed, but has got to establish a 10-second gap over him in order to then get the points. Huff and Harrison giving chase. This is ideal for Dan right now, with everyone in the top 4, aside from him below him in the championship, currently outside of the top 5. That'll change when Grumio makes his pass, but can he establish 10 seconds on Cook before the end? And Huff needs to get moving too. Making the pass on 10th as Grumio gets around Cook, but Cook come back at him towards turn 1. On the outside, nothing to it. Huff to the inside of 10th at turn 1. Gets in front. But again, both cars dropping points to Dan right now, and in a big way too. And Imrie, the only one in his way right now. But that gap is starting to come back up again. As it stands for Grumio right now, he's still looking at what will likely be a P10 finish. He'd need to gain another 6 seconds. He'd need to gain, more or less another 6 or 7 seconds on Harrison to try and get himself back in the points. Or any higher, rather. AT is currently putting himself where he needs to be to get a last point off his teammate, but Grumio then will likely pull away and mark the end of that challenge. Yellow flag's out. It's caught for a 3rd time around. He goes there. And the exit at turn 4. Gets himself moving again, but it's been a tough evening for him. If he's unlucky, he may go a second lap down. But Ferrari then are set to add to their tally in a big way in the Constructors. So they'll go from 47 to 62 in the standings. That'll put them right behind sort of VCarb, and not too far from Alpine either. Yellow flag again, and that is Ericsson going slow. Ericsson backing off to allow some lap cars through. Second car's got a lap behind today. And 10 seconds for Ericsson for a season check. No, that doesn't really seem too right, but I mean, he's not going to lose out to Cott. Changes being made up front. Grumio pulling away there from these guys. Cook, Huff, and Obsessed still fighting over positions here. Obsessed is 3 laps from scoring points for Cadillac as Huff goes for a slide there. And Cook hanging on to things right now. He's set to secure P5 unless Grumio can gain another 7.5 seconds in 3 laps, which I think is beyond even Grumio. And speaking of gaining, Imrie now 3.6 seconds up, so it's over a penalty safe as he puts his teammate a second lap down. And Grumio there, 13 seconds. And that might cost him points completely here. What's the gap? It's still about 10 seconds to him and AT. And Grumio, unbelievably, might go down as a no-score at the circuit where he's been so dominant in recent seasons. It appears things have finally gone away from him. He's P5 on track and is set to lose a number of more places here. As Huff gets around Cook, I think Grumio's going to fall out the points completely. And a big no-score for Grumio will mean that Dan gets a huge gain back in the Drivers' Championship. As Huff makes the pass for P5. He passes Grumio on track here. And I think Huff's tyres now starting to come into their own here. He's one of just 2 cars on medium tyres in this race. Him and Cottony. And look at him pull away here. I think Grumio's given all he can, those softs. He's been on them for 7 laps. And one of those rare days where the champion is finally is actively being beaten here, both by penalties and by the drivers. Because he wasn't in a position to, he wasn't leading the race by any capacity. He's obsessed and makes the pass on, or goes side by side with Harrison, fighting for 8th place. Yellow flag again behind Ericsson, letting cars go. Oh, contact! Around goes Harrison! And a bit too deep there at turn 12, and the 10th cannon does so well to avoid running into him. Harrison falls out the points, falls down, and a second spin there. And that might cost the Alpine driver points completely. Even with Grumio's penalty, he slides across the circuit there. That was very dangerous. And Harrison's race has gone completely here with just 3 laps to go. With 2 laps to go, sorry. Up front, Imrie, 4.8 seconds in front of Dan now. And as the circuit clears, Imrie is out front. And Harrison retires the car, crushing into the race there. Side by side with the returnee Obsessed. Those two battling on track for the first time ever in the RDL. And Harrison comes off worst. An Obsessed Gamer on course for a P7 finish here. Points on return for a driver who didn't always see a ton of them in his initial stint in the league. And these guys, I'm sure you didn't expect to be chasing Grumio for a position on the last laps. But here he is, and he may still beat him, you never know. What a return that would be. But up front, Imrie starting the 33rd and final lap. 5.5 in front of Dan here. And he's run these hard tyres spectacularly. Started in P2. Oh, what the? Harrison's AI is still on circuit. And Imrie, running his line, very nearly ran into him. Fortunately, he's still got enough for lead to not worry about losing it to Dan. But that could have been so costly. And again, just a matter of the multiplayer in this game needing a serious workaround for F1 27, because we can't be having that in league racing going forward. So a message to EA and Codemasters, get that right for next year. But Imrie, half a lap away though, after that minor scare, half a lap from his 2nd victory of the season. And for a 2nd season in a row, looking to take multiple race wins. He did it in season 16, he did it last season too, but it took him until Singapore to do it. And Imrie, after the disastrous season that he and Ferrari have had so far, he's only scored points 4 times in the first 4 races. And that's going to change here as he finally puts himself in the positives, in the plus bracket, as he rounds turns 13 and 14 in the place where Lewis Hamilton took his first Ferrari win. It'll be George Imrie who takes the checkered flag and wins for the 2nd time in season 21. Imrie wins the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. Dan home in 2nd place and will increase his championship margin. Curtis home for an extraordinary podium. JB in 4th when completely under the radar in the closing laps. Huff will take P5. Grumio is going to drop out the points completely here. Look at that, several cars in behind him as Obsessed is weaving back and forth, trying to get a race around HB Cook as Grumio goes off in the gravel and crashes the car across the line. Grumio passed the line and will definitely fall out the points there. Huff P5, Cook P6, Obsessed P7. What a return for him. 10th Cannon P8, AT P9, and TJ winds up with the last point then, narrowly beating both Audis for the end of the checkered flag. Lucky P13, Grumio P14 there at the very end of the race. Ben, Connie, Ericsson, and Cott were on at your order. Harrison goes down as the lone DNF. Imrie on top. Grumio denied by pit penalties and running against his own mortality at the very end of the race there. And soundly beaten today after taking pole at a circuit where he's been so good in previous seasons. And Imrie making the claim. We have to get a word from him about terms of just how close those tyres were, because he and Dan ran those for 20 laps. And a big risk was taken on there, it seems, there with the high tyre wear around the circuit. The one stop looked risky, but these two pulled it off. A number of cars pulled it off there and came away with a big result. JB a big 12 points, let's not forget. Curtis a big 15 for Haas. That'll bring him close to Red Bull in the standings. But Imri then back on top, and I imagine very pleased to be back there. And both props to Imri and Dan for that whole chase. Dan obviously fell away at the end, and Imri nearly lost the Grand Prix thanks to Harrison's rampant AI there. Emerging back on the circuit, but victory in the end for Imri and for Ferrari, their second win of the season, and perhaps a sign of more positives going forward for the outfit from Maranello as a whole as the prancing horses back on top then. Imri wins it from Dan, and Curtis completes your podium. JB in third place, Huff in P5. Sorry, JB fourth place, Huff in P5. HB Cook obsessed in P7. What a return for him once again. I hope to get a word in with him if we can. 10th Cannon in P8, AT P9, and TJ back in P10. PJ P11 leads him his teammate Ethan in P12. So close to points for Ali, but they'll get there next time. Lucky P13. Grumio 13 seconds served. He finishes at P14 there. Ben, Cottony on the lead lap. Ericsson and Cott a lap and 2 laps down respectively. And Harrison classified as 3 laps down, but goes down as a DNF. And at the very end of the race there, while fighting for those points later on, and could have been a big beneficiary of things overall with Grumio at the end. Imri is already here in the commentary box waiting for us. Imri, mate, congratulations, and a second win of the season, and especially this early on. I mean, you after the season you've had so far with Ferrari, you can't say further than that, can you?
This is the turning point. That's all I can say.
The short interviews continuing. Imri, talk us through that race, mate, because that was, I mean, you and Dan took a big risk on with the one stop, and I'm guessing you were awfully close there in terms of tyre wear come the end. If you can give us a bit of insight in terms of sort of how that race ran for you as a whole.
Got a good start, got forced off. And was it Harrison that pit? I can't remember. He pit early, and I just went, we're going for the one stop. And it's risks like that win your races. Like I've just said in chat, win your races if you take them risks. So
Can you sort of give us confirmation as to how close the tyres were to a puncture at the end of the race there?
the last I checked, it was 85, and then I turn it off because I don't want to look at it in case it does go bang.
Do you know what? Fair enough. I'm honestly, I'm the exact same when it comes to punctures in career, for example. But yeah, I mean, second win of the season. Of course, it's been disastrous at Ferrari so far, based on the team's usual standards. But is this sort of the start? You say this is the start. This is the start of the turnaround, shall we say? Is that sort of how we're going to put it for this one?
Definitely. Obviously, I got the win today, but Cott's still struggling, so I'm going to see if I can try and help him get back up there where he used to be.
And in terms of next week's race in Austria, it's a circuit you've done all right in the past. Is there potentially a second straight win on the cards there, or is it going to be another challenge?
I think it'll all be about qualifying, to be honest with you. It's just going to be a train again like it was today, most of the race, and it's difficult to overtake, so we'll see.
Well, seeing that you are one of the qualifying maestros of the league, to put it mildly, we'll see exactly how that works out for you next week. But Imri then win number 2 of the campaign, and we'll come now to Huff, who came home in the 5th position at the end. Huff, I mean, solid race. I mean, you were up there with the lead train the entire time. Strategy-wise, were you disappointed in terms of sort of how the two-stop worked out, or would you have taken the risk? Could you do it again if you could do it again?
Yeah, I kind of messed up the strat. I just thought, I looked at my tyres, and I think I was like one of the latest to go on the hards as well, and it was already like 38% at like lap. It was like still early on, so I was like, I'm never getting to the end. But you know, it's like what what Emery said, you've got to risk it, I suppose. But yeah, I just wasn't willing to end my race, considering I've had a bit of bad showing in the last few races, apart from that win. So I just wanted to get to the end.
Obviously, a big 10 points there. You were the highest finishing driver who ran the two-stop in today's race. Of course, Grumio with the penalty at the very end there. That puts you, as it stands right now, obviously pending steward's report, that will put you just 5 points behind him in the Drivers' Championship going to Austria. Is that a place you think you can overhaul there?
We'll see. I think I've definitely got a better race in me than today. So I think today is a track that it's very close between everyone. So I feel like other tracks might be a little bit different. So we'll wait and see.
Fair enough. I mean, still a fantastic finish going forward for to get sort of back on form after the sort of off kilter race in Monaco. And as you said, the races in Jeddah and Miami a few weeks ago, save for the win in Canada. But P5 for Houghton in today's race. We'll come now to the driver who finished one place in front. JB in P4. JB, best finish since Australia. I mean, given the risk that you were taking there, that's got to feel good, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Pretty happy with that. Definitely, I think my best race of the season. Australia was a bit of a fluke. I think everyone was getting used to the battery and everything, and I think I just did a bit better there. But today was on pace. And yeah, the one stop was a risk. I think my tyres were sort of 85% by the end. Curtis in front of me slightly more. So I was expecting one of us top four to be in the barrier, but yeah, it all worked out in the end. So yeah, very happy.
I mean, obviously, good points for Williams. That'll push you guys forward by another 12 on to 56 in the Constructors' Championship. You and Lucky as a collective. One thing I did want to ask you, though, the sort of the first stint for you guys as a whole, I mean, there were points where sort of you were both sort of pushing towards the sort of the top 6 or so, and then Lucky started to fall away. Were you communicating with him during the Grand Prix? Is there anything you can tell us at all about that?
No, I wasn't speaking with him. Not sure. I don't know what happened. I think his tyres dropped off a bit quicker than maybe mine did. I don't know if my front left tyre pressures were max because of how quickly they wore away in the race. I don't know if maybe his were lower and then, the wear hit quicker. I'm not sure. But yeah, not sure. I think he was on the 2-stop as well and pit quite early, so it just didn't work out for him. But as we've said, the 1-stop was the risk. But it was either finish 3rd or 4th, or drop to 10th, making the 2nd stop. So I wouldn't have been satisfied with 1 point. So yeah, happy with how it went. And like you say, Williams, good points because we did slip behind Ferrari, who obviously we won't be overtaking, but it's good just to get some points on the board again after a difficult couple of weeks.
And looking ahead to Austria next week, of course, that's a circuit where there have been times in the past, JB, where I know you've sort of that's been a circuit before. I've seen you sort of spring up and claim a result. Could that be the same sort of thing again next week, or is it going to be a bit more of a challenge, like Imri said?
I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, I think it was Austria that I finished 3rd a few seasons ago. Again, it's a high downforce track, which I prefer, but yeah, well, I'm happy with the result today, so I'm not expecting the same thing next week. But if I can get some more points, that would be a good string of results to start.
Points on the board, then the aim for JB and Williams after a spectacular 4th place finish, to put it mildly. We'll push forward again another position to Curtis, who gets himself his 2nd podium of the season for Haas. Curtis, fantastic stuff, mate. Again, like these three we've already spoke to, you took the risk and got the reward. And yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that you guys at Haas are establishing yourselves as sort of best of the rest of the season. Would you agree with that?
I think so. Again, it's similar to last season, isn't it? Where we just consistently scoring points. Obviously, I had my issues last week. TJ had his issues this week, but still managed to come home with a point provisionally. So, even when we're not scoring, one isn't scoring, the other is. Just keep that sort of going.
I mean, obviously, I'll ask sort of what I've asked in terms of the tyres. How close were you to a puncture towards the end? Because JB said you were a bit closer than he was.
I didn't look. Last time I looked, it was 80%, and that was like 2-3 laps from the end. But after that, I thought, it's in God's hands now, sort of thing. It's all just luck from this point onwards. But no, I managed to stick with the leading train up until the first stop. So then everyone stopped a bit earlier than I thought they were going to. I was trying to make it to lap 15. Huff, I think, pitted lap 13, and I couldn't take. I tried to avoid being cut astray from the undercut, but even pitting 1 lap later left me about 2.5 seconds outside of Huff's overtake mode. So after then, I just really struggled to get back into it.
Fair enough. I mean, it's still an exciting race as a whole as we be up front there, challenging the leaders as you have started to do it in recent weeks. Can we see that carry on next week in Austria, perhaps?
Well, Austria is not a track I usually go well at, but then neither is Spain, and neither is Miami. So then they're both tracks I've done well in, 2 podiums from them. So, why not? For some reason, this regulation, I know a lot of people hate it. I'm not a big fan of it, but it's working for me.
Why not? That's definitely a sort of a tagline going forward, I think, for so you guys at Haas as a whole, but more particularly to you with the podium finishes. But yeah, good job today. Again, very quick in the car as always, and sort of getting the benefits from the work you're putting in that sense. We'll come now to HB Cook, who finishes in the in the sixth position. Obviously, one of the beneficiaries late on of that late Grumio penalty, but still a fantastic race in his own right. Cook, mate, I mean, P13 to P6, it's not a bad drive at all. Congratulations.
No, I like to say I beat Drummy on track, even though he did bin it into walls, but I'm going to take any positive I can. But no, I think that race was chaotic to the least. Imran mentioned it earlier, it was always going to be a train. Both me and Ben actually had an engineer for this one, and he was too busy laughing his head off when pretty much having a battle with Drummy on obsessive final few laps. But no, to get a P6 at the end of it, it's still points for the team. Shame that Ben's form is just, he's struggling to the points, but we're trying to open the best we can. And obviously he's just not getting any luck with the car at the minute, but it is what it is. So we just have to keep pushing. But yeah, it's a chaotic race, trying to avoid many people. Got hit by a few people, but not like big. And then great jobs to my P6. We nearly punch her.
I'll ask you so on the off chance, because with about 3 laps to go, you were right in front of the collision between, there was sort of an altercation between Obsessed and Harrison, which led to Harrison falling down the order. Did you see anything at all? Or?
I saw them two deciding to go for Ding Dong, I don't even know corner numbers, so what at corners, and then I think I was behind Groomy at the time or something like that, so I know obviously we were lifted in front. And I think it was a mix of them two just pushing each other, and then the DM deciding they don't like Harrison today, and then sent him spinning, which so fortunate for him, he had a great race. I expected him to get past me, but I was many celebrating when he got spun for the main fact of I knew it was one less threat for me. So, but that's how to really say my perspective of it.
Fair enough. And I'll ask you, in terms of next week, obviously, you look back at your last 5 races you've competed in, the results being 6th, 7th, 9th, 1st, 3rd, 7th, 9th, 1st, 3rd, and now 6th. I mean, it's consistent points in particular for you. Is that something you can keep going next week?
Hopefully. That's something that I've aimed to do. Obviously, my aim is to obviously help Ben get up there in top 10 as well. Obviously, we've got some very quick people in here, some people who, surprise you every week, like Obsessed. His first race back and he comes in with a ban. So I'll keep working, the team will keep working, and we'll just see what happens on the day. And knowing my little Austria, I'll say I'm quick around there and it'll start raining and pretty much all the practice does out at winter. So we'll just see what happens.
So hard work, the game plan over in Faenza as more good points go V-Cub's way, courtesy of HB Cook with the P6 finish. We'll come down to 10th Cannon, who finishes in the 8th position for McLaren. And yeah, 10th, fell back on the start. I didn't want to ask sort of what the concern was there. I didn't particularly catch what happened to you in the first lap.
So, are you aware of the concept of talent?
Some would
I
say no.
Wasn't. Well, I wasn't, and that's why I had such a bad start. I dropped like 3 positions off the start because I was trying something new out, and I messed it up, and then I just had a bad start. I was holding the brake, which I didn't realize I was doing until like 2 seconds after the start. So I was putting a little bit of pressure on, so that wasn't great. And then just from then, I think around the middle of the lap, I had an issue with my wheel, which actually, as we speak, I'm currently trying to resolve. So I had to negate that. It happened again towards the end of the race, but I consider myself quite lucky to come away with the points I did because that had every chance to go very, very wrong.
I mean, obviously, the wheel issue obviously compounds things towards the end of the Grand Prix. Do you think had that not happened, you might be able to challenge Obsessed or Cook for positions up in front of you?
Nah, my tires were gone. I was well into puncture territory on the front and left at the end. I kept the position ahead of AT because I decided I was just going to go for it and see what happens. But I think as I went into turn 1, I hit like 80%, I think. And I was kind of I was praying it was gonna hold out. Luckily, it did. I had a feeling it was gonna go in the last 2 corners, but it didn't. So I'm lucky, I guess. Yippee!
Obviously, the point scoring run can start to begin again after the 12th place finish in Monaco. Is that something you're confident can continue next week in Austria?
You just have to remind me, don't you? Just have to bring me down off my high horse. Yes, I think. Yes, I think it can happen again. I don't know. Austria. I like Austria as a track. I've enjoyed it over the past few seasons. I thought it was quite fun. I've always likened it to. I think I've likened it to the Daytona of Formula One, or that might have been Monza, but they're kind of the same thing. They're both like massive ERS trains. But now with ERS gone, it's going to be not ERS, DRS. But now with DRS gone, it's going to be interesting to see what the dynamic is. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think I'm going to do fine so long as my wheel survives. I've typically gone well around Austria, and I think Dan will too. So we win these.
So plenty to answer then in Formula 1's answer to Daytona. So fantastic from 10th there, P8 finish for McLaren.
Hell yeah.
And we'll come now last of all to Obsessed Gamer, who we welcome back to the audio commentary box. Obsessed, first question, mate. We obviously welcome back. But the other thing is, if I'd have told you at the start of the Grand Prix that by the end of it you'd be chasing Grumio for a position, would you have believed me?
Well, I figured one way or another I was going to see him either in the wall or on the grass somewhere. I mean, look at Singapore. I mean, we've just got such a history together. So, but no, I probably wouldn't have believed you. I figured I'd be hanging out around P12, but no, really happy with how the race turned out.
And obviously, you're one of those runners who went on the one of the 7 who went on the one stop. How close were you to puncture at the very end there?
I know I was at least above 70. If I had to guess, about 78, 80, right around there. I didn't check, but I was just praying, hoping that I wasn't going to get a puncture on the last lap.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm still getting over just sort of how fantastic the return is. Because I mean, I think you and I can sort of both agree. So in the initial stint in the RDL, the points weren't always sort of as frequent. But I mean, is this perhaps the start of a rebuild Obsessed and trying to see in the points more often?
I hope so. It'd definitely be nice, and very happy with the improvement of just coming back. I think the regulation change definitely helps things, but yeah, hopefully it's more consistent now.
And obviously Austria next week, is that a track we can expect you to try and do more of the same at, or is it sort of is the form sort of circuit dependent so far, these new regulations?
I think I've got good history with Austria. I think I remember I qualified semi-high in the top 10 one race. So hopefully it'll be a good race.
Well, there's plenty to keep an eye out for next week on the 17th of August. But that'll do it then for interviews. So guys, it's been very popular tonight. So thank you all for coming along. And obviously, congratulations to the majority of you, if not all of you, Anna, who got in the points, who are currently still sat here in the chat, in the thing waiting for me to finish. And that'll do us then in terms of tonight's RDL coverage. Hope you have enjoyed it. If you did, make sure, of course, to like, share, and subscribe for more future RDL content. The Austrian Grand Prix, definitely one of the highlights of the season in terms of chaos. One not to miss. 17th of August next time out. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we shall see you all next time. Goodbye.